The advice I'd give a younger artist who's just starting out would be to be authentic to yourself. I think so often about when artists really hit and tend to have the most success, it's because they are so uniquely themselves. And so many times you get in a situation where you're put with a producer, or you're kind of striving to follow someone else's success. And don't forget that the reason why you are you and what makes you special is your unique voice, and to trust your instinct in that regard. The obstacles that I faced as a young female artist in the early aughts were, I feel like it was hard sometimes to be a young woman in a male-dominated business. I would find myself feeling like I had to say yes to certain things or agree to everything. And it really took me a while to learn how to say no and to stand up for myself in that regard. I remember a time when I was working, just about to release my second record, and I showed up to a fitting for a music video for my song Breathe. And I was told by everybody that I wasn't gonna play guitar in the video, that I was gonna do this dance number with a choreographer, and I lost it. And I was like, no, you guys, I can't dance. This isn't who I am. Like, believe me, if you'd seen me dance, that's not the way to sell records at all. And I was like, no, this isn't who I am. I wanna play guitar in my video. It was a huge battle. And I just think back to moments like that, and I'm just so grateful that I stood up for myself. I think the key to having longevity in the music industry is to not worry about trends and worry about what's going on out there. I think when you stay true to yourself and you just show up to write songs for yourself and make music for yourself, that's really the best way to have authenticity. I think if someone took made a line from The Spirit Room through to my new record, and you saw the musical choices I made along the way, you could say that there's been a reinvention, but at the end of the day, those songs were all written by me with one or two other people in a room with a guitar. I feel like that's always been the backbone to everything I've done. So maybe sonically stuff has changed with producers, but I'm pretty proud that I think if you hear a song, you can say, oh, that's a Michelle Branch song. I don't feel like I had much critical acclaim early on, or maybe it was just that I was so young that I felt this need to prove myself even more. Only recently, when I was re-recording The Spirit Room for the 20th anniversary, was I able to really listen and applaud the person I was when I wrote it as a teenager. I think at the time I was just so desperate to prove myself as a true artist that I couldn't focus on my successes. So if anything, maybe it became a kind of something that I had to overcome a little bit. I've found as a writer that I can't really sing a song or relate to a song unless there's some piece of it that feels real to me. And it just like as a music fan, I'm known to like sit in my car until the song's over and, you know, feel all the feels. And I like to try to have an element in every song I do that hopefully will touch someone who's listening to it that way. So yeah, I draw from personal life, but then I also elaborate and I, you know, make stuff up. But it's really bizarre that sometimes I'll think something has nothing to do with my life, and then like 2 or 3 years later I hear it and I'm like, oh, maybe I somewhere subconsciously actually did know what was going on. The Spirit Room was a magical experience for me. I only have realized how rare it was that I was able to make the record I made now that I've had distance from it. I was a young girl, newly signed, new to LA, and I was put in the studio with John Shanks, who produced the record, and we hit it off immediately, and he still to this day is like family to me. And we just hunkered down and made this record in really like 35 days. And nobody from the label knew that we were working on an album because we were just in a co-writing session. We were supposed to only get together and do 3 songs. And by the time John and I had finished, we had this full album, and it was great because nobody had any expectations, and we were just able to just work on our own. And the fact that the record went on to have such a big life was really unexpected, and I'm just proud that I was able to do that as a young female artist. Was able to have like no outside voices on my debut is really rare, I think. I didn't think I was gonna re-record The Spirit Room 20 years later, but I am a huge Alanis Morissette fan, and she did a re-record of Jagged Little Pill when it was 10 years old, and Jagged Little Pill was a massively influential album to me as a young teenager. I could tell you, like, I could sing that every word from that record from start to finish. It means so much to me. And when she re-recorded it, I actually found that I enjoyed some of the songs even more than I did the originals. So in the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to do something special when the birthday came up, when it turned 20. But then it just happened so fast. I didn't expect 20 years to fly by the way it did. But I do think that, I do hope that people will listen to both and hear how it's evolved. A lot of the songs I wrote on The Spirit Room, I was, 16, 17 years old when I wrote them, and I now have a daughter who just turned 17, which is a trip. And a lot of the songs I wrote on The Spirit Room were about this like imagined romantic life that I had really yet to experience. And here I am, I, have been married twice. I'm almost 40. I can find so much meaning in those songs now. And I never get tired of playing them. And that's pretty incredible. The only thing that I go back and look at 20 years ago and regret is some fashion choices. Luckily, my musical choices, I still stand pretty strong behind. I was reminded recently that when I went into the studio to record Everywhere, nobody wanted me to record it. And I wouldn't have remembered this story had John Shanks not reminded me. I had played the demo for my A&R guy, Danny Strick, and he was like, maybe you should write something new. Maybe you should focus on something else. And we had kind of finished our work. We kind of didn't need another song. And I came in the studio and I played Everywhere pretty much as it was. It was missing like the second verse lyrics. It was missing the bridge. And John was like, we need to record this song. And I was like, really? Are you sure? Like, I'm happy to do a new one from scratch. And I just think of like how drastic my life would be, how drastically different my life would be if we hadn't have decided to record Everywhere that day. And if we had written a new song, it's just wild to think about just how it took John hearing through a work tape. And if no one else heard it, but John did, and that's pretty cool. The Game of Love turns 20 this month, which I just found out, which is wild. I feel like the whole thing was kind of a fairy tale for me. I was a huge fan of the New Radicals, and a few members of my live band had been in the New Radicals with Greg Alexander, and we started covering You Get What You Give when I was playing shows. And Greg came down to a show and saw us play it, saw me butcher his song. And he was working with Rick Knowles on a Santana record, and they wrote The Game of Love. Apparently had Tina Turner in to sing on it, and also Macy Gray. And neither of them were right for whatever reason. I've heard both versions and I thought they were amazing, so who knows? But Greg actually was the one who advocated for me to come down and sing on it. And I went down not expecting much. It had only been a few years since I was literally in the audience in Phoenix, Arizona at a Santana show with my parents. So the whole thing was pretty surreal. And I recorded it and was like, that was a cool experience, I'm never gonna hear back. And a few weeks later, I get a call. I was on the road and they were saying, hey, we have exciting news. You have to get to Chicago because you're filming a music video for The Game of Love. And I was like, what? So the first time I met Santana was on the music video set, and it was just like trial by fire. I was like, okay, we're doing this. And I ended up touring the world with him for the promotion of that song. It was really such a surreal, incredible experience. I feel like I got gypped with my Grammy experience because when I was nominated for The Game of Love with Santana, no one bothered to find out or tell me that the award was given out in the pre-televised section of the show. And it was the last year that the Grammys were in New York, and there was a massive snowstorm. And I remember being in a line of black cars to be dropped off at the red carpet. And it just seemed to go on forever because the weather was so bad. And I started all of a sudden everyone's phone started ringing in the car, and it was people telling me congratulations. And I was like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, you just won a Grammy. And I was like, I'm in a car. Like, I didn't get to go up to the podium. I didn't get to like have my moment, which is probably great because I'm bad under pressure with like acceptance speeches or anything of that sort. But the Grammy just arrived in the mail a few months later, and that was my Grammy experience. That night ended up being really fun because I presented an award with Elvis Costello and Peter Gabriel, so that was cool to meet them. And the night ended with me and like the Strokes, like in a bar till sunrise. Like, it was a really fun night, regardless of whether I got to walk on the Grammy stage or not. I have a new song out recently on this new record called I'm a Man, and it's a song that I started writing really often. When I'm writing songs, I just kind of mumble the cadence of words or of the melody until they form words, and I kept coming back to I'm a man, and in my mind I'm like, what do I have to say about being a man? Because I don't know anything about being a man, and that opened the floodgates to thinking about what pressure it must be to be a man in this day and age of like having to provide or having to be a quote unquote like man. So I was having empathy for what it must be like. And especially in this age, I wrote it in March of 2020. And I was thinking about the topic of toxic masculinity and how all of this has changed in recent years. I have a son who's 4 years old, and I'm thinking about the man I want him to be one day, hopefully. And I couldn't really tell the story of being a man because I'm not a man and I don't have that experience. So I started exploring kind of the other side of the coin in the verses and talking about what it is to be a woman. And how crazy that it's 2022 and we still don't have autonomy over our bodies, and we still are fighting for some of the same stuff that, women have been fighting for decades. It definitely is a song that I wrote without realizing what I was writing. And then by the time it came out, Roe v. Wade had just been overturned, and I was releasing the song the following week, and the timing was kind of crazy. But I'm proud that I got it out there, that it made the record, and that it can shine a light on an issue that's really important to me.